In today's video, I'm going to make a desk. It's for my son's birthday. It's something he desperately needs and it's what he's asked for. I'm using 18mm marine plywood for the drawer cabinet, 12mm plywood for the legs and the drawers, and for the desktop and drawer fronts, I'm using 12mm form ply. I'll explain why I'm using these different sheets of plywood as I go. I'll start with the 12mm marine ply, cutting full strips at 90mm wide. I need 5 of those, 3 for the legs and 2 for the drawers, and they happen to be the same width for both. Next I'll cut pieces for the front legs, and they need cutting both ends with a miter saw set at 15 degrees. The leg pieces will be made up of 2 layers laminated together and will form 2 leg assemblies, one for each end of the desk. After I cut 2 pieces for the front legs, I then need to cut 2 more but reduce the height by the width of the plywood strips. That's the front legs cut, and here's the rest of the pieces of the leg assembly which I cut off camera. The back legs were cut the same way as the front ones, but I had the saw set at 5 degrees. The pieces will be glued together to form very strong joints, and it's super easy to put together too. Next I'll taper the legs to add a bit of style to them. The tapers could be cut with a circular saw or on the bandsaw and cleaned up, and they could even be done with a handsaw, but I'm going to do these on the table saw. I need to make a proper tapering jig. I did have one, but I haven't been able to find it the last couple of times I've needed it. It only took me about 10 minutes though to knock this one together, and it'll do the job fine. I've laid out the pieces ready for gluing, and they need to be mirrored. The long pieces across the top will be on the inside of the desk. I'll put the legs aside for now and get started on the desktop, and for that I'm using form ply as it has a great finish and it's perfect for the job. I wanted the design to have a clean and light look to it, so I'm not using any aprons or supports, and that means that the top needs to be fairly substantial. Form ply only comes in 12mm and 17mm thickness, around here anyway. 17mm isn't thick enough, so I'm going to laminate 2 pieces of 12mm together. Nothing sticks to the coating, including glue, so I need to remove that from one side of each board. That was taking a while. It's very tough, so I took it outside and used an angle grinder with a flat disc. That's much quicker, and I made sure to go lightly and not make the surface too uneven. That's why I left a few spots to finish with the sander. It would have been very easy to make a real mess of the surface with the angle grinder, but it turned out pretty well using this method. I didn't mention earlier that I cut what will be the bottom piece slightly smaller in width and made sure to clamp that inside the edges of the top piece. Every time I use form ply, I get asked what it is. It's a hardwood plywood that's used for forming concrete. It's very good quality with few voids. It has a great finish and it's good value as it isn't too expensive considering the quality. Next, I'll put a bevel on the underside edges of the desktop to give the desk a sharper and cleaner look. I'll do that on the table saw, and I've just put together this tall fence to help with that. The most difficult part of this was the form ply is pretty heavy to handle, but it wasn't too bad and I managed. As well as the bevels, I'm also rounding the two front corners. I just made a simple template by carefully marking out and sanding to the line on the disc sander, and I'll use that with the router and a pattern following bit. Next, I'll sand the bevels and smooth out the points on the rounded corners. A desk for a teenager has to have a wireless charger, so I'll make a recess in the underside of the desk for that to fit into. I meant to mark around the recess with a compass before drilling, but I forgot, so now I'll draw around the charger in about the correct position. It was pretty difficult to see the line on the form ply, but it didn't turn out too bad and it doesn't need to be perfect anyway. I'll do a quick test to see if it works, and I left about 2 to 3 millimeters of form ply between the charger and the top surface. Now I'll drill a hole towards the back of the desk, and that's for cable management. Next, I need to add a stretcher between the legs. I'll use the 18mm marine ply for that. And first I'll cut off a manageable size piece that will be just big enough to get the stretcher and the pieces that I need later on for the drawer unit. I could have just attached the stretchers to the legs with screws, dowels or dominoes, but even though it's more work, I'll chop them in and it'll be much stronger. If I did use screws or even bolts, the desk would be able to be broken back down. I'm not worried about that, but it is an option. Before I assemble the legs and stretchers, I'll sand them first, as that's easier to do now. I laminated 2 strips of plywood off camera. This will be a cleat to attach the desk up to the legs, and I only need one on one side as the drawer unit will do that job on the other side. Before I start the drawer unit, I'll see how it looks with the top in place. I'm cutting dados into the side pieces for the top and the bottom of the drawer unit to fit into. It would be okay though to just butt join these pieces. It wouldn't be as strong a joint, but it would be plenty strong enough. I also cut a back piece for the unit now, and that will help keep everything square as I assemble it. The drawer unit will fit directly underneath where I put the wireless charger. Because of that, I'm drilling a slightly larger hole in the top so I can access the charger if I ever need to, and it will also prevent it from overheating. Next, I'll make the drawers, and I'm cutting the pieces to length from the strips that I put aside at the start of the video. The drawer bottoms will be 4mm marine ply, so I'm cutting a groove in all the pieces with a regular blade and then nudging the fence over to make a second pass. Next, I'll sand and finish all the parts, and for the finish I'm using satin water-based varnish. After filling and lightly sanding, I put another coat on all the parts, and then I also put a third coat on as well. That came together well. Now I'm making the drawer fronts, and for those I'm using the form ply. I've made a template off camera for a handle recess, and using the centre lines I've put on the drawer fronts, I'll mark the recesses out and then cut the waste out of those on the bandsaw. Now I need to take the drawers back out and remove the piece of drawer directly behind the handle recess. Before I assemble the desk, I'll fix the charger in place with small bits of plywood and a couple of screws. For this end, I can screw the drawer unit to the back stretcher, the legs and the underside of the top. One last thing to fit, which I made off camera, is a backstop to prevent things falling off the back of the desk. It's just a strip of form ply with the ends rounded over. I think that turned out fantastic. I really like the design, but more importantly, Bradley loves it too. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.